The courtroom was silent. My husband stood beside his lawyer, smirking like he had already won. He believed I had nothing. He believed I was just a stay-at-home officer's wife who would walk away with empty hands. But when the judge opened the folder in front of her and read my name out loud, along with a number that made the entire room go still, his mother, sitting in the front row, stood up, swayed, and collapsed. Nobody rushed to catch her, because everyone was too busy staring at me. Let me take you back to where this all started, the day my grandfather's will was read. My name is Major Elena Reyes. I serve in the United States Air Force, and for 12 years I wore the uniform quietly, without ever bringing my rank home with me. At home, I wasn't a major. I was just Elena, wife to Daniel, mother to our 2 kids, Mia and Josh. Daniel worked in sales. He liked being the center of attention, the one who made jokes at dinner parties, the one everyone laughed with. I never minded standing in the background. I loved my family more than I loved recognition. My grandfather, Walter, was a quiet man who built a small manufacturing business from nothing after coming home from his own years of service. He never talked about money. He wore the same old jacket every winter and drove a truck older than my marriage. When he passed away peacefully in his sleep, I grieved him like part of my own heart had gone with him. I never once thought about what he might have left behind. To me, his memory was the only inheritance that mattered. Then came the day the family lawyer called us all in for the reading of the will. The lawyer's office was small, lined with old books, and smelled like coffee and dust. My parents were there, my aunt, a few cousins, and Daniel, sitting beside me with his arm around my shoulder like the perfect husband. When the lawyer began reading, most of the estate went where you'd expect, some to my parents, some split among relatives. But then he read a special clause, one my grandfather had written himself, in his own careful handwriting. To my granddaughter Elena, who reminds me most of myself, quiet, steady, and never once asking for anything, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my company shares, patents, and personal holdings. The room went quiet. My aunt's mouth actually fell open. My cousins exchanged looks. But Daniel just squeezed my shoulder and smiled, like this was wonderful news for our little family. What none of us said out loud, yet was the number attached to that inheritance. The lawyer told me privately, after everyone else left, that the total value, accounting for the company's recent expansion and pending patents, was just under $9 million. I sat there stunned. My grandfather, the man in the worn jacket, had built something enormous, and he had trusted it all to me. I didn't tell Daniel the number that day. I wanted to find the right moment. I wanted to surprise him, not with numbers, but with a memory. I wanted our kids to be part of it too. Mia and Josh had always loved their great-grandfather. He used to build them little wooden toys in his garage, the same way he once built his company from scratch. So I came up with an idea. We would surprise Daniel with a family dinner. The kids would present him with one of great-grandpa's old wooden toy trucks, restored and polished, and I would finally tell him about the inheritance, softly, as a family moment, not a headline. We planned it for a Friday night. Mia made a card. Josh helped me wrap the little truck in brown paper, tied with string, just like Grandpa used to wrap gifts. I remember feeling excited in a way I hadn't felt in years, like our family was about to share something meaningful together. But when we arrived at the restaurant, Daniel wasn't smiling like I expected. He looked distracted, checking his phone under the table, barely glancing at the kid's handmade card. I brushed it off. I told myself he was just tired from work. I still went ahead. I told him softly about the inheritance, the company, the shares, the number the lawyer had given me. His eyes lit up in a way I had never seen before. Not with love, not with pride in me, with something closer to hunger. And 2 days later, everything changed. I came home from a training exercise to find a manila envelope sitting on our kitchen table. Divorce papers. Daniel was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, that same hungry look still in his eyes, except now it had turned into something colder. "I want out," he said. "I've been unhappy for a while. This just helped me realize it." I stood there holding the envelope, my hands shaking, not from sadness, but from disbelief. Just days after learning about my inheritance, He suddenly realized he was unhappy. I asked him what he meant. He laughed, actually laughed right in my face. Come on, Elena. You really thought I married you for love? You're sweet, but let's be honest, you were never exactly exciting. I stayed because it worked. Now there's more at stake, and I want my fair share before you lock it all up in some trust for the kids. He believed, because I served quietly and never talked about money, that I was naive. He believed the courts would see me as just an Air Force wife with modest savings, and that he could walk away with half of a fortune he never lifted a finger to help build. He smiled at me like a man who had already planned his victory lap. He told his mother the news that same night, and she called me personally to say, "Don't make this messy, dear. Just sign the papers and let the adults handle it." I hung up the phone, sat on the edge of my bed, and made a decision. I would not beg. I would not argue. I would let the truth speak for itself in the one place where lies don't survive, a courtroom. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of the kids. Instead, I called my grandfather's old lawyer, the same steady man who had read the will. I told him everything, the timing of the divorce filing, Daniel's words, his mother's phone call. He listened carefully, then said something I'll never forget. Your grandfather built protections into that inheritance long before you ever needed them, Elena. He always said money changes people. He wanted to make sure it never changed you. It turned out my grandfather, in his quiet wisdom, had structured the inheritance as a separate trust, established before my marriage even legally recognized any shared assets, meaning it was, by law, entirely mine, untouched by divorce proceedings. Daniel didn't know that. He assumed inheritance meant our money simply because we were married. He never bothered to actually read the paperwork. He was too busy imagining his new life. I gathered every document. I stayed calm during every conversation with Daniel, letting him believe he had the upper hand. I even let him tell his golf buddies he was about to cash out. I wanted him confident. I wanted him loud. Because the louder he was outside that courtroom, the more humiliating the truth would be inside it. The court date arrived. Daniel walked in with a new suit and a new haircut, practically glowing with confidence. His mother sat in the front row, arms crossed, smug, ready to watch her son collect what she believed was owed to him. The judge went through the formalities, then turned to the financial disclosures. Daniel's lawyer confidently requested half of what he called marital assets, including recent inheritance gains. That's when my lawyer stood and calmly presented the trust documents, proof that the inheritance was legally protected, entirely separate, and untouchable in this divorce. The judge read through it herself, then looked up, first at Daniel, then at me. "Major Reyes," she said, "your grandfather structured this remarkably well. This inheritance remains solely yours. Mr. Reyes has no legal claim to any part of it." Daniel's smile disappeared. His lawyer whispered something to him, panicked. But the judge wasn't finished. She continued reading the financial summary out loud. My military pension contributions, my own savings built over 12 years of disciplined service, and the newly confirmed inheritance total. When she read the number, just under $9 million, out loud in that courtroom, the silence was so heavy you could hear the air conditioning hum. That's when Daniel's mother, the same woman who told me not to make this messy, stood up from her seat, gasped, and collapsed into her chair, her face pale with shock. People rushed to help her. Daniel just stood there, frozen, the same hungry look from days before now replaced with pure disbelief. In the end, the court ruled clearly. Daniel walked away with nothing from the inheritance, because legally, there was nothing of it to take. He was left instead with the reality that the woman he called not exactly exciting had quietly built a career, a reputation, and a legacy strong enough to stand completely on its own, without needing him at all. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I picked up my kids from the babysitter that evening, hugged them both, and made dinner like any ordinary night. Mia asked if Daddy would still visit them. I told her yes, of course, some things don't have to break just because a marriage did. Josh asked if we could keep Great-Grandpa's wooden truck on the shelf. I told him it would stay there forever. A reminder of the man who protected our future long before we knew we'd need it. Looking back, I've realized something important. People who marry for convenience often reveal themselves the moment convenience runs out. Daniel didn't leave because he stopped loving me. He left because he thought loving me had suddenly become profitable for someone else, and he wanted to profit too. But real value, the kind my grandfather understood, isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself at dinner parties or brag on golf courses. It works quietly, plans carefully, and protects the people who deserve protecting. If there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: never confuse someone's quietness for weakness. The people who don't need to prove anything are often the ones with nothing left to prove. And sometimes, the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs one calm moment, one courtroom, and one judge willing to read the numbers out loud. If this story moved you, let me know in the comments. And if you believe quiet strength always wins in the end, type justice below.